Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. My name is Anna, call me Miss Annie, and I am super excited to host today's show. We are on the topic of girls' education and female empowerment in Ghana or Africa. Such an interesting topic, dicey, and we're going to dive right into that. So, we are going to have an enthusiastic and passionate educationist and the founder of Girls Education Initiative of Ghana, Madam Elizabeth Patterson. We will dive right into the topic after this short break. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us today, talking about girl education and female empowerment on today's podcast. Before we get into our discussion, can you briefly give us an overview of your work in girl child education and female empowerment in Ghana?
Okay. So I am the founder. Hello, everyone. I am the founder of the Girls Education Initiative of Ghana, or GEIG. We are nearly 10 years old. We'll be 10 years old next year, January. So we're in our 9th year of operating here in Ghana. Our mission is to provide academic and financial support for girls and will include applicants with special needs or disabilities. Our work in disability advocacy means that whenever we're recruiting a cohort of students, we give a percentage of our slots to girls and young women with special needs or learning differences. And then we also do advocacy work through our communications. We go to schools and train teachers to teach different learners, and as well as supporting public policy and trying to implement them, trying to help the schools and the teachers that we work with to also implement them in a practical way. That's the work that we've been doing here in Ghana and in the US for the last 9 years.
All right, thank you. That seemed like a very great initiative. What motivated you to go into this area, and what has been your most fulfilling moment in this particular field?
Okay, so my motivation for getting into education has been the fact that it's a personal story, a personal journey for me. I often say that my life was saved because of education. So just to give a little bit of context, I was in a near-death accident in 2003. I was in a coma, and then thankfully I was able to get out of the coma and recover. And this was my junior year in high school. This all happened. And throughout the recovery, all I wanted to do was return to school. So I finished my junior and senior years of high school from the hospital bed, and then finally returned to my campus in 2004 to graduate from high school. And so that's the personal. And then professionally, when I finished my undergrad, I started teaching in low-income areas in New York City. And I had a position as a teaching assistant in a middle school in New York City for an all-girls school. It was called the Connolly Center for Education, Holy Child Middle School. It was connected to, I think, somehow connected to Holy Child here in Ghana. I don't remember the connection, but it was somehow connected to Holy Child here in Ghana. So in my personal and professional lives, I had always found myself drawn towards education or education policy in some way. And I'm one of 2 girls that my parents had. And my parents always did their best to ensure that myself and my sister would reach the highest level of education that they themselves were not able to attain. Again, after I had taught for a bit, I traveled to South Africa to do some research when I was in grad school. And I did my research on how kids, males and females with disabilities, were accessing education within South Africa. And I found that although South Africa is very, very advanced, to say the least, in this way, this context, their inclusive education was not practical enough. I befriended and saw a young girl who was in one of my classes. She was a student in a class that I was a part of. She was mute and I believe deaf also, I cannot remember. She was mute. And throughout the entire time that I was doing my research, she and her fellow special needs students were not really, really included in the mainstream classroom. They were doing special education. And oftentimes when people are disabled or thought of as like not mainstream, we are a lot of times marginalized and not included in the what everybody else is doing. So just as here in Ghana, I've seen kids with disabilities in a separate classroom where they're being taught more like vocational skills, vocational, those like hands-on practical things. These students in South Africa were not also getting your traditional classroom where there's a teacher in front of you and you're being taught theory and you're expected to understand it. It wasn't just the traditional mode of education for them. They were being viewed as maybe they would not thrive in that kind of a setting. So the end goal for them was to just do something vocational, something with their hands, which I don't know if you would agree with me, but in our context, when you're growing up and you want to be like a seamstress or make pottery or whatever,
yes,
that's looked down upon, right? It's like the people who are thought of as being successful are the folks who are the doctors, the lawyers. But if you're doing something practical, you're not seen as you can actually do something impactful within society. And so within Ghana and South Africa, I saw this, that the kids with disabilities, the students with disabilities were always being taught vocational curricula. And as much as vocational education needs to be incorporated in everything, I think it would be to the benefit of all of us if education was more inclusive and more mainstreamed. So kids with special needs or disabilities can see what they can be and what the potential is that they have.
Oh, thank you so much. I really do agree in the inclusiveness of education, and your personal experience was quite a great motivation, and that is something that I really applaud you for. Now we can go to the main questions at hand. How would you describe the current state of girl child education in Ghana? Would you say Ghana and Africa generally is making significant progress?
Is there a second part to your question?
Yeah, the second part to the question is, if that is the case, why do you think so? And to give a few reasons for that.
Okay. All right. So as I was prepping for this, I did a little quick search on girls' education in Ghana, even though I know what the reality is. I wanted to back whatever I say with some facts and data. This is from October 15, 2022. I'm trying to get the BYU, which school is this? So it's an EDU, right? I am sure I will find the schools, the university name right now in a second.
Okay.
So Ballard Brief. The article is called Girls' Access to Education in Ghana.
Okay.
And I 40, I think it's 47. One study reported that of those Ghanaian women married before 18, 41.6% have received no education at all. Only 44.7% had reached secondary school. And this article is talking about child marriage being one of the barriers to girls accessing education in Ghana. And so, I mean, in 2022, I don't think I need to go on any further, but in
you're right.
21st century, if such staggering data is still out there as a hindrance to why girls are not accessing higher education, then more work has to be done, right? Work has to be done.
Yeah.
I am surprised that I mean, child marriage is marginally reducing here in the country since I started doing this work. Every year I hear and I read that there's like marginal decreases in the rate of child marriage within Ghana, but it's still an issue that persists. And so if we're in the 21st century and we're still reading about child marriage being more or less a norm in some parts of the country, then that is troublesome. If we're having about 42% of Ghanaian women being married before the age of 18, then I don't know. If they're going straight in, I'm trying to think, when I was 18, what was I doing? When my sister was 18, what was she doing? And had I been encouraged or been told that at 18 years old, while I'm still trying to figure out like where I'm gonna go to college or how I'm going to learn how to drive or what I want to do with myself, my future, if I had to be thinking about marriage and maintaining a home, it would have been tough. And I'm sure for these young women it's no easy task. Because if you're marrying, right, even those of us who are a little bit older than 18 or whatever it is, once you get married, there's an expectation that you'll bear a child. Within a year of you'll conceive, within a year of getting married. So these young women are getting married so quickly. And imagine if within 1 year, they're having children. Their childhoods are being stripped of them. Their innocence is being stripped, right? And I cannot say this with fact or back it with any data, but I know that the populations that tend to engage in early marriage is usually like an older man to a young girl, right? And so so you're transitioning from your father's home to go live with another father figure. It doesn't sound good to me in any way, shape, or form at all.
It doesn't.
Yes, and then you're in your father's home, you're encouraged to get married, you get married, whether forced or whatever it is, all because maybe the family is in need of some financial something to help them out financially. So they take the dowry and then you're in. And then you go have a child. And if you're not lucky, 50-50, you'll have a female, right? So cycle keep repeating. And we cannot break this cycle of our girls and our young women being involved in marriages when they themselves are children. You know, so it's and more or less it's heartbreaking that in the 21st century, this is one of the biggest barriers to girls accessing secondary or tertiary education here in Ghana.
And I do agree with you on this. You have made a very great point as to some of the factors that actually hinders girl child education in Ghana. And now, would you say that there are any specific policies or government initiatives that have been effective in promoting girl child education in Ghana or in Africa countries?
I cannot cite the specific policy, but I know that our constitution
All right.
mandates. I cannot cite which portion of the Constitution says this, and I will go back for future talking points.
Yeah.
But I know that our Constitution mandates that each and every young person is supposed to complete basic education. I know that. But if you're being married early, and I know that there's a policy that's very much against child marriage. If I may, let me just do a quick Google search. But I know that there's policies against child marriage in Ghana. And like I mentioned earlier, the policy will come and then it's all beautiful in ink, right? But then is the implementation that always matters.
Yeah, that's always true. Implementation usually matters in most of these policies for it to be quite effective.
I mean, if it's not being implemented, right?
Yeah.
And like there's no legal enforcement of any of these things, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So I found the stat. I was correct. According to the Ghanaian Constitution of 1992, any person under the age of 18 is a child and can therefore not marry or be married off.
Yeah.
This is underscored by the 1998 Children's Act, which sets the legal age of marriage at 18 for both boys and girls. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's true.
It is in our Constitution.
Thank you so much for that information. Now, when it comes to all these information about girl child education, some people feel today that girls today have so many more opportunities than boys, with some expressing the fear that we may be leaving boys behind. What is your take on this, since everybody's always advocating for the female child?
Okay. So whenever I do interviews, this question always comes up. So my response usually goes something like this. If you're a girl, number one, just by nature of being born a girl, you're a second class to your male counterpart in any society in the world. But in sub-Saharan Africa, it's even worse. So you're a second class in any way, shape, or form. Culturally, you're not looked at as someone who could be on the same level as a male, right? Economically, your earning power, you may, with a few exceptions here and there, but if you're born a girl, your earning power is not the same as a male, a boy. So you have all those things against you. And our culture, when I say this, people think that I'm being anti-boy or anti-male. I want equality. And I always say, like, if you have a male child and a girl child, there shouldn't be anything that you expect of your son that you cannot expect of your daughter. Like, you should set the same bar for both of them. But within our society, our culture, clearly there are certain things that is expected of the boy that is not expected of the girl. The boy is expected to grow up and be, I know this is also biblical, but to be the head.
Yeah.
Well, as girls, if we rise up to being the head, you know the connotation, the backlash that we get. Like, you're too bossy, you're like you're overbearing. I remember when I came to Ghana and I would do interviews, the question was always, is it Miss, Mrs.? I mean, even you, like, before this, but I get why you were asking me, so you would know how to address me. But the question was always, they would always address me when I had not told anybody if I was married or not, right?
Yeah.
And in some ways, a lot of ways, I felt like when they put the Mrs. before your name. There was like, you felt a little bit of oomph, that there was a little bit more respect that people gave you. They probably sat up a little bit more straighter when addressing you. They gave you a little bit more respect when talking to you. But then when they find out that you're a young woman in your 20s, 30s, and not married, then it's like, oh, we cried in a way. I hope it's okay if I
Yeah,
if I speak to you.
it's
Yeah,
fine.
like who is she? Why is she? What's wrong with her that in this, excuse me to say, in this her old age,
Yeah.
she's not married, you know?
Hmm.
And then, but if a man, a boy, a man, let's not say, a 30-year-old is not a boy. A man of 30 is not married, then it's okay because he's probably trying to get his financial house in order before he could get enough to go and propose to his girlfriend, right? It's just all those things that as females we have going against us.
Yeah.
But boys usually have that for them.
Okay. Thank you so much for that information. Um, when it comes to girl child education and I mean how girls are being seen in regards to boy in the society, there's always an imbalance, and I know you agree with me on that. And
Mhm.
a few times there have been media reports of even people in authority, like teachers, both in the basic or secondary or even
Mhm.
tertiary education, having, I'll say, affairs with their female students. This is
Mhm.
particularly worrying, even in the basic school level. What do
Mhm.
you think can be done to eradicate this sexual abuse and harassment of girls when they are actually given the opportunity to go to school?
Mhm. Okay, so I talked about laws and
Yeah.
things just being on paper, but nothing really being implemented. I've
Mm.
had some of my students who we meet at least once a year, to more than that, but at least once a year to check in with our girls when they're home from school or before they set off to go on campus for the school year. And I remember our current SHS students, when they first went, if not all, most of them reported that, oh, madam, our
Mm.
teachers are making advances. Our
Mm.
teachers are doing this. They're saying like, if we don't come, and it's not the female teachers, it's the male teachers. If we don't come to their quarters after class and maybe cook for them or help them wash their clothes, it's not washing their clothes. We would
Yeah.
not do well in class, right? And so if in the instance that it oversteps that, oh, I'm gonna come and help me carry my briefcase to my
Mm.
office. The instance that and 9 times out of 10, I'm sure it won't just end there.
Yeah.
It goes beyond that that level of interaction. That these teachers should be prosecuted. And unfortunately, it's become too commonplace that if a female student was to go and make a complaint that my teacher touched me there or my teacher made a pass at me, verbal or something, they would not be believed,
Yeah.
and rather, too often, rather the girl would be seen as, what were you wearing or what did you do in order for your teacher to make that pass at you, right? It like they would not be believed. So I think and I believe that if and when a young woman makes a complaint about whether it's a teacher, any male figure in their lives and their community making a pass or something at them, they need to be believed. And law enforcement, I'm not going to talk about law enforcement here, but if it gets to a point where it makes it to like a police case or DOVSO or somebody reports it, believe it and actually follow through and prosecute the person. I know that in the US, an accusation alone is grounds for law enforcement to come to the home of the person who's being accused and be questioned. And then they can go and stay there, like plead their case or speak on their own behalf with their lawyer. But here in Ghana, like I said, I highly doubt that if a young woman or even a young man, let's say, I'm not going to say that there are not accusations made from young men, but more times the young woman would not be believed. If an accusation is made, believe the person making the accusation and let's follow through with legal measures to prosecute the person who's being accused.
Okay. Thank you so much for that enlightenment. We also know that when it comes to girl child education, sometimes the opposite gender, that is boys, should also, be involved in the conversation. So relating to one of the previous questions, how do you engage or involve men or boys in conversations of girl education and female empowerment, if in case you do so?
Okay. So with our programming, when it's our scholarships are the only, I would say, are the only program that's tailored just for our female students. If you're a boy, you cannot get a financial scholarship to go to school from GEIG. But now one of our programs is inclusive. It's a community program. It's inclusive of both boys and girls. But if you want to be a direct beneficiary of the organization in terms of a scholarship, you cannot. But how do we include male voices in the advocacy for females? By having workshops, by bringing all voices to the table. Like I mentioned, our workshops are programs, except for the scholarship. It's inclusive of both males and females. So when people are invited to a workshop or a conversation around child marriage, teenage pregnancy, menstrual hygiene, and you have like both males and females present, you'll get to appreciate and hear from both sides on what they think could happen. Let's say if there's a forum on child marriage, right? And both genders are present, it's highly likely that a male voice would chime in for why they think that such an issue is still persistent. And likely there will be, like you mentioned, there will be that voice that says this is too much girls, and women empowerment, and that needs to end. And we get that all the time. But if we bring everybody to the table, you will hear diverse voices, and then more than likely you will get a male advocate for female empowerment when all voices are heard.
All right. You really make some very great points in leveraging opportunities for the girls and also including male voices, or for them to understand the importance of promoting education for girls too. So if you were the education minister or sat at one of the highest decision-making table, what would be your key interventions to promote girl child education?
Okay, so at the basic education level, there's almost parity, gender parity for males and females at the basic education level. As we advance into senior high school, tertiary education, and in certain degrees or programs that females tend to study, or don't tend to study, you see that representation of females is dwindling or is lower than males. So if I was the education minister, I would say that we should develop or implement, I'm sure there is such a thing, but I don't see it on the practical level. We should implement a quota where for every male student that is enrolled in, let's say, a degree like business or STEM, in like mechanical engineering or something, for every male, there should be at least 2 females enrolled, or there should be a female enrolled in the program to balance it out. And I would even go to the further step we're saying that if it's the financial barrier that's going to prevent a female from accessing such a program or accessing higher education, then we should get financial aid or financial scholarships to make sure that specifically targeting just females in higher education to make sure that there's enough enrollment for females at those levels and in those programs, so we could even out the numbers.
Okay. So I think those would be very great intervention to help promote child education in Ghana. So now let's focus a bit more on what you do at Girls Education Initiative of Ghana. First, what made you start this initiative, and how has the journey been so far for you?
I think I briefly mentioned at the start of the interview that it was my inspiration for founding the organization was personal, and then over time became a bit more professional. Personal because I was in a car accident that nearly took my life, and I was still able to get tutored from the hospital bed after I endured a coma and go ahead to graduate from high school. And then professionally, I did some research around girls' education, comparative research from Ghana and the US education reforms that are policies that are there. And I found that even in a quote unquote developed nation like the US, there are still barriers to access to certain, I mean, maybe not education in general, but I spoke about certain programs or certain areas of study that females are not usually seen, that it's not accessible to us. But even in the US, where you would not think that such a thing would be a hindrance for females, there are programs like the STEM courses. Females to this day don't really feel like it's accessible to them. So those, and just me wanting to see every young girl, every female student here in Ghana and the continent get the same access to education that I have been so privileged to have, because my parents didn't raise me and my sister to think that high school or college or university was the limit for us. They always advocated that the highest level of education is what we should get. So if it meant PhDs, I'm sure at some point we'll get it. If it meant PhDs, then they would push us, regardless of our gender, our being male or female, to go and access it. And all these things are what I would say have been my motivation to start my organization and stay with it for nearly 10 years.
All right. As I said earlier, that is a quite impressive motivation. You did mention a few strategies and programs that you put in place in your organization. So is there any more, or are there any more programs implemented by your organization to promote girl child education in Ghana?
So we do leadership development and mentoring. A lot of our students have one-on-one mentors with young women or young professionals who I believe if you see yourself in somebody, then it's aspirational. If society is telling you that as a young girl, you could only be a teacher, a nurse, or like a homemaker, and you see someone like, say, I don't want to go to the STEM fields so much, like a Lucy Quist, right? Or Regina Hunu, you know that it's possible. And then I don't know why I'm thinking of only STEM people right now. And I guess because I've been talking about that not being accessible to us. And if you're a young woman with a special need or disability, and you see yourself in someone like Farida Bedwi, right? You see that in spite of what society is telling me about my limitations, about who I am because of my gender and my disability, that there's this mirror out there that I can, like I said, aspirational. I could project my life and plan to be Farida Bedwi or someone of that caliber, So we do mentoring at the community level and at the individual level for our students. And then as our girls and young women are getting older and they're tapping into university, we do professional advancement and professional development activities for them. They take on internships, and recently they have started to develop their own social enterprise projects, social impact and social enterprise projects. So they could also learn how to be entrepreneurial and also make an impact in their societies.
All right. Thank you so much for the explanation and the programs that your organization actually puts in place for girls' education. So, with the programs that you implement in your organization, could you discuss any notable achievements or success stories that have resulted from your organization's efforts to promote girl-child education?
Okay. So our first cohort of students, 90, I would say maybe 96%, with the exception of one, are enrolled in university at the moment. So is that 99 or 90, whatever? Yeah, with the exception of one, are currently enrolled in higher education. Our second cohort, 100% of them are in senior high school and on track to be enrolling in higher education next year. We've had, not that transitioning out of Ghana to continue your education is a big feat or a big deal, but we've had 2 students be able to be admitted to schools, one at ALU, African Leadership University in Rwanda, and then the other one finished her high school education in the US, in Illinois.
All right, that seems like quite an impressive, result from the efforts that you put in promoting girl child education. And thank you so much. We really applaud you for the hard work. Now to our final question. May I know, how does your organization collaborate with local communities and stakeholders to ensure a sustainable and long-term support that you keep giving your girls in the education you give them?
Okay. With the exception of, we, if not all, most of our partners are local other nonprofits or other organizations, corporations here in Ghana. So I don't 100% believe in going outside of Ghana or the continent to support our students. I would also say that our team, this is funny, with the exception of me, I'm the only foreigner on the team, but I'm also Ghanaian. I like to have our girls see themselves in us, right? So being able to see, a team of 7 or 8 young people in the organization, there's no foreigner or anything. That breaks down that imagery of, you need, if you're going to run a nonprofit or an NGO, you need outside support, or outside usually mean like white people to come in and save us. I like to see myself in the people that I'm working with, and I would like for our students to, if they don't get anything out of the organization, besides their education, that in the team that they could see themselves.